Alright folks, here it finally is the review of my Albion Caithness. I've been putting off making this video for a while, which I shouldn't have, but I was actually worried about not doing it justice, or alternatively giving the impression of a fanatic Albion fan. But yeah, let's jump into it, shall we? So, Albion is a sword manufacturer from the US, Wisconsin. They make primarily reproductions of medieval swords, although they also have a few from antiquity and the Renaissance. And, they are very well known in the sword collector community for a reason. They have a very solid reputation for making high quality swords. And, well, what can I say? They absolutely live up to their reputation. So, how are these made? They actually do not hand forge them, but they cut out the material of the steel plate with a machine. And some people may find that off-putting because it's not an authentic production method, of course. But at the same time, personally, I have no problem with that. I care about the end result, not how they got there. And I actually like the precision involved, because a machine can cut out a blade at much higher precision than any blacksmith could shape it. And the blade steel is 6150, which is a fine-grained carbon chromium alloy steel with high abrasion resistance and very good shock resistance and toughness. So this very strong steel. It's pretty much, from what I understand, the best you can have for making a sword as far as a mono steel sword is concerned. The way they assemble the hilt is the most secure way you can go about it. They actually make the guard with such a tight opening that it has to be hammered onto the blade. So that means it stays on there by itself. It does not require compression of the handle to stay put. If I were to remove the handle entirely, the guard would still be solidly on there. And same with the pommel, it is also hammered on there, so the pommel in and of itself is attached, and then the end of the tang protrudes past the pommel. They heat that up and then hammer it down so it expands, and then afterwards they grind that down. So it's actually not easy to even see the peen because it's polished. The handle is put on in two pieces, so basically like handle scales glued onto it, and then they wrap it in leather, in some cases after putting risers there like this for a bit more ergonomic grip. And the entire thing is wrapped in leather, epoxied to the handle. And then they wrap it in string to make sure that everything's nice and compressed and that it's very firmly in place. And that's what creates this pattern. At the distance, it may look string wrapped, but it isn't. It's really just the impression of the string that they use to hold it in place. That not only makes it look interesting, but it also increases the traction of the surface. So it makes it very nice and secure in the hand, doesn't slide at all, and it just feels really good in the hand. And also the handle shape here you can see is oval, so fits the hand perfectly. The guard is actually cast and then polished, so you can see it has a satin finish. It's not a highly reflective polish. This model here is a sword that would have been at home in Scotland in the 13th century. It's based on grave effigies in the National Museum of Scotland. And the blade is an oak shot type 12. So very interesting design here. You can actually see the Viking influence on this, because Vikings, of course, were very active in Britain and also had extensive contact with the Scots. And this here is the type of pommel design that you would see in similar ways on Viking and Germanic sword pommels with this these different segments here, and a fairly wide pommel. And as a side note, this sword is so confident in its quality that if you don't like it, it flips you the bird. So this is a high-end production sword, and the quality is definitely reflected in the price. It currently costs $1,023, which may seem very expensive, but you have to be aware that historically accurate sword reproductions just have their price. They're typically in about that range. And for that price, you get a sword that is virtually indistinguishable from the originals. Like, if this traveled back in time, people probably wouldn't bat an eye at it. I mean, they would notice the superior steel quality because the steel that we have nowadays is of much higher purity. So this here is actually more durable. But yeah, it's a very faithful reproduction. And really, I can't stress enough how fantastic the handling is. This is really always with Albion swords what blows me away. Like, you pick them up and you go, holy crap, this is just, it feels like nothing in the hand. If you just look at the thing, you expect a certain heft. You know, you expect it to have, you know, well, it's a massive steel object. You expect it to be relatively heavy. But then you pick it up and you go, wow, this just feels like nothing in the hand. It's extremely lively, meaning that you can move it extremely easily, you know, just by moving the point around, which would be very difficult with a less well-balanced sword. Speaking of the balance, you can see it is fairly close to the guard, and that is primarily thanks to the distal taper. It means that the thickness around the guard is higher than the thickness near the tip. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. And that's what balances the sword. The way the sword flows is just really impressive. It really wants to move, and it's very easy to change direction quickly, and it doesn't require a lot of effort or strength to swing around at all. You can make very quick, deceptive cuts with it. So it's, of course, very hard to convey how it feels in a video. But so far, everybody who has picked it up was immediately impressed with just how lively it feels and how light it seems. The weight of the sword is 1.15 kilos, or 2.5 pounds. And as always, I'm gonna post the specifications down below in the video description. Another really impressive thing about it is the flexibility of the blade. It has just the right kind of spring temper to allow it to take a strong hit without being damaged. Hopefully you can see here when I slap the pommel, you can see the vibration. And also, you can probably tell it kind of sings when you strike it. At the same time, it's not so flexible that it's just flopping around as you're handling it. You probably won't be able to see that because as I turn it with the edge facing the camera, it almost disappears because the blade is so thin. But I can show you here. It's quite an impressive amount of flex. And in fact, I've seen testing videos by Albion where they actually put the blade in a vise and repeatedly bend it to 90 degrees, and it took them several attempts to finally make the thing take a set. And that's also a good thing. It actually bent when they overflexed it several times like this. It did not break. So that's a very good thing. I find that this degree of flexibility does make cutting a bit more challenging, because if your edge alignment is not quite right, you're going to have a lot of vibration and you're not going to get the same effect. So I definitely noticed that this requires more skill. It cuts very well, but you really need to practice with it. I did a couple of cutting tests and also thrusting, where I set up a ballistic gel target with 20% ballistic gel, so it's the really tough stuff. and wooden dowels inside, and it penetrated really well. On a couple of occasions I actually started getting worried because it was flexing that much, and I really noticed that the thrust was putting a lot of force onto the blade, and I was actually starting to worry if I had, bent the blade. But upon inspection it was still 100% perfectly straight. So that is the real advantage with this kind of flexibility. Even if you put a lot of pressure onto it and have really strong impact, it's not really going to be affected. It's not going to break. So that's definitely a testament to its durability and toughness. There was also one instance of poor accuracy when I actually hit the tire that I had set up for holding the target instead of the target itself. And this tire actually has a steel core, so it's basically just a not overly thick layer of rubber, and right underneath you have the steel. So that's pretty bad. And I have had cases where I actually bend the tip of a blade by accidentally stabbing into the tire. And this here had very, very little damage from it. I mean, I don't even know if the camera will be able to pick it up. Let's see, with a bit more light maybe, but yeah, it's really, really difficult to even show that. There you can just see a little bit of light reflecting there on the edge, but it is very, very minor. This would be very easy to fix, which I'm going to, of course. It's probably just going to take me 3 minutes or something. It's not a big deal at all. But otherwise, the finish is still immaculate. If you see any irregularities there, that is simply where I oiled it, where a bit of lint and dust got on there. But the blade itself is still perfect. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. After my testing, I can hardly even see that it was used. So that is pretty awesome. The tip is still perfect as well. Also, the handle wrap is just indestructible, it seems. I mean, there's not even a hint of wear on it so far from my use. It's just still as new. And by the way, the green color is actually custom. It's not part of the standard colors they offer, but you can easily request any color you want. I think it cost me what, $15 or $20 extra, or 25, something like that, for the custom colors. So it's really not a big deal, and it looks very nice. So as you know, I always try to find both pros and cons. In this case, it's really difficult. There is one thing I can point out that I wish would be a bit better on a sword of this price, and that is, it would be nice if it came just a bit sharper. I mean, don't get me wrong, the sharpness is perfectly acceptable. It is usable and everything. It doesn't have to be shaving sharp or anything, and it does the job. It's not a problem at all. But I feel that it could be just a little sharper at this price range. However, I cannot complain about the way they did it. Like, first of all, you're not going to see a secondary bevel on this. It's just one smooth grind from the edge of the fuller all the way up to the edge. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. And the reason why I even noticed this in the first place is I used to own a first generation Spatha, also made by Albion, an older model. And it had a noticeably finer, sharper edge. So they can do it. It's just, in this case, it's not quite as fine as it could have been. But again, it's perfectly usable. It's not a problem. Other than that, as far as cons are concerned, well, price. That's really, I can see why that would be a con for a lot of people, simply not being able to afford them. I can see that. But Albion does actually offer a payment plan, and normally it takes them a couple of months, like about 3 months maybe, depending on their current backlog, to make the sword in the first place. And then you can pay as much as you can for a couple of months, and then when it's done, you may already have paid it off, or if not, they're gonna keep it for the remaining couple of months until you've paid it off, and then there you go. And what I can say is Albion swords have actually taught me what a real sword is supposed to feel like. And I'm not saying this to diss more affordable reproductions on the market. There is good stuff at lower prices, don't get me wrong, but you just notice immediately this is how they handled back in the day. This is exactly how they felt. And it's amazing, quite frankly. I mean, it gives you a whole new level of appreciation for historical craftsmanship. So really, really very impressed. I mean, this may sound terribly biased and everything, but I freaking love this thing. That's all there is to it. It's amazing. So there you have it. The Albion Caithness. It freaking rules. And that's my professional opinion. Thanks for watching.